Well, I caved. After weeks of searching in stores, I gave in to my lesser angels and got the Platinum Two-Face on eBay. Is this figure worth the aftermarket coin? Heck no. But am I glad I got him? Stick around and find out. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. I've already looked at the Standard Edition. Today, I'm taking a look at the McFarlane Toys Platinum Edition Digital Two-Face. Starting with the packaging, and I've already looked at this box. It's one of those fancy teal digital boxes, with the only difference this time being the Platinum Edition sticker. I do like how this line prioritizes things like names and character logos, and I also like how colorful they are. The box says this is Silver Age, but with this being the Platinum, obviously that's not the case. Flipping around, we have that classic orange and purple suit. I could see somebody get confused if they look at the box and see this version as opposed to that artwork, but let's be honest, chances are if you know this figure exists, this is the one you wanted anyway. For those fruitlessly hoping to find their Two-Face in store, here's the UPC. I gave it a 5 last time and it's the same box, so for packaging, Two-Face gets 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Two-Face stands at just over 7 inches, or in the ballpark of 18 centimeters, and it's just a simple repaint of the Silver Age version, which itself was mostly just a repaint of Batman Forever, which itself was mostly just Aaron Eckhart with a new head and a different jacket. If you saw part 1, you'd know I mostly like this figure, with my main complaint being that they didn't paint the plaid on the purple side. To my eye, that made him look just a bit too plain. Fortunately for Two-Face, with this new black and white color scheme, that is absolutely not a problem. This costume is meant to be solid black and white, with no additional paint apps required. It's a simple design introduced to us by Batman the Animated Series, and then later embraced by the comics and other media. Half of him is good, half of him is bad, and the black and white outfit makes it abundantly clear. It's one of my favorite Two-Face designs, and between the two is the version I wanted most of all. That's not to say I don't still have a couple of minor nitpicks. The nittiest of my picks is that I really wish the wrist balls were the same color as the skin, and I also wish that skin wasn't quite so pale. As we'll see in Playability, that's going to keep him from being able to swap hands with other figures, and believe me, that is something this figure desperately needs. That said, I do have some other comments on the head. The skin is sufficiently cracked and melted and kind of reminds me of Freddy Krueger, but whereas the green version added some extra paint to bring those details out, they skipped that this time around, making him look a little bit plain. That's not to say that his mouth or his bug eye aren't painted well, because they are. Still, just a little bit would have helped. On that note, let me just say that while I do appreciate the classic, to me the red just makes more sense. That said, and once again, I'm not that crazy about the Harvey half. To the figure's credit, I do feel like it looks like two sides of the same head. Following the creases and wrinkles, you can really see what I mean. That being said, I just feel like he looks kind of old and haggard, though I guess you could say the same thing about Tommy Lee Jones, with the laugh lines in particular making him look less like Two-Face and more like Scarface. Beyond that, the only other criticism I have is that the figure looks kinda dirty. I'm not sure if you can see what I'm talking about, but there are these dark patches all over the white. I bought this figure from a reseller, but the whole thing was still sealed and new. I'm hoping I can wash all that off. Otherwise, it does take away from how squeaky clean the good side of Harvey is supposed to be. I docked the original version for not having the plaid, as well as for not being crazy about the Harvey Dent face, but this one does feel more complete. For presentation, I'm giving the Platinum Two-Face 4 points. If you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and give it a like, and if you'd like to toss a coin my way, I now have an account with Coffee. Link for that in the description below. Moving on to Poseability, and Two-Face is held back a little bit by the fact that he's in a suit. From the top though, and his head is on a dumbbell joint, Harvey can look up this high. Here he is looking straight ahead, and once again he can really bury the chin. Great amount of tilt, and of course all the way around. Moving on down, and Dent can raise his arms this high, and has complete rotation of the shoulders, bit of forward and back, but of course we have bicep swivel, double elbow with that perfect DC Multiverse bend, and wrist balls that can swivel and hinge up and down, or side to side. Moving to the middle, and Harvey has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist, but they're hidden underneath the jacket. Because of that jacket, he can only arch back this far, here standing straight for a point of reference, and he can only hunch forward this far. Compare that to Aaron Eckhart, who has the exact same torso, but benefits from an open jacket. Beyond that though, we do get side to side, and also spin. Working our way down, and Harvey Dent has the standard McFarlane hips. Notice the mechanisms are cast in white on both sides. Harvey can only kick this high, but he can bend his leg back a fair bit. Dent also has a pretty decent split. Not as much twist in the hip as I'd like to see, but it's there. And then moving down, we have double jointed knee, toe articulation, and ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and like Two-Face's mood with the flip of a coin, Pivot. Still held back by the jacket, for Poseability, Two-Face gets 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and I have the same basic thoughts and feelings as I did last time. First things first, and of course he has a trading card and a figure stand. One problem with Platinum Editions that occurs to me is the fact that the trading cards don't update as well. As such, I now have 2 of these, but nothing that represents this specific version of Two-Face. For those curious about what it says though, you can pause here, and once again I do like the more colorful, vibrant stand that comes with the digital figures. On the subject of digital though, I have another question. The whole conceit of this line is that the figures come with these scratch-off codes. You redeem them for an online model of the figure that you display in a digital showroom. Pretty much it's the action figure equivalent of an NFT. My question is, do these update? In other words, are we getting a digital version of the Platinum, or yet another version of this? That's the kind of thing I want to know for sure before scratching it off. Otherwise, if I had a duplicate, I could just sell it. Once again though, my biggest frustration with this figure is the lack of actual accessories. I love the fact that he has this coin hand from Aaron Eckhart, but had they also included the Tommy Lee Jones hand, and maybe just a pair of fists, or an alternate trigger hand, that would have been more than enough for me. Throw in a nice metallic looking coin and I would have been over the moon. You might even say I'd flip for it. The point is, McFarlane didn't have to make any new accessories, just give us extras of what they've already made. Because of how unusually pale they made Harvey, we can't even mix and match. Like I said before, it's frustrating because previous digital waves came with lots of accessories, including things like alternate heads, and even miniature figures. Fortunately for Two-Face, Playability is more than accessories. It's also fortunate that I have the Berserker figure so I can borrow his guns. More importantly though, Playability is also about how well your figure plays with others. For the standard version, I focused on more classic versions of characters. For this video, I'll be going a bit more modern. Going back to where this design all began, and we've got to start with Batman the Animated Series by Kenner. Even though this does look more like baby blue than white, still it wasn't long before the comics and other adaptations embraced the black and white costume, as evidenced here by DC Superheroes and Arkham City by Mattel. The first DC Multiverse Two-Face was actually him dressed as Batman from Battle for the Cowl, which is a perfect segue to Dick Grayson as Batman from Batman Reborn. Now, I've already shown you the black and gray version of Nightfall with the classic Two-Face, but I've been very excited to see how he looks with the new Year 1 Batman. If you didn't know, I'm actually giving a Year 1 Batman away to one lucky subscriber. To enter, check out my verses with Cowardly Lot. I'll include a link to that video at the end of this one. Admittedly, this Bruce is a bit short, but that makes sense because he shares a lot of parts with DC Rebirth. Next up, and here's 3 Jokers, which scales really well, along with blue and gray and black and gray versions of Hush, or if you prefer a wired cape and updated neck articulation, the Cowardly Lot. With no word as to whether or not McFarlane's going to make a video game version, here we have Harvey with Arkham City and Arkham Knight, but where there's Batman, Robin can't be too far behind, so here's a couple of versions of Damian, along with the Infinite Frontier but labeled as Rebirth version of Tim Drake. Next up is New 52 and 3 Jokers versions of Jason Todd, the Red Hood, along with Better Than Batman and Titans Wave versions of Nightwing, along with Art of the Crime and Cassandra Cain versions of Batgirl. For a few of Harvey's fellow rogues, and here's Mortal Kombat 11 and Deadly Duo versions of the Joker, along with the Punchline 2-pack for a more modern version of the Penguin, and here we have Arkham City, along with Arkham City and Anne Hathaway versions of Catwoman, and the Arkham City version of Two-Face's Batman Forever co-star the Riddler, whose buffoonery he simply cannot sanction. For another villain whose Batman the Animated Series adaptation influenced comics and other media, here we have Mr. Freeze, but for a few bigger baddies, and here we have Man-Bat, the slightly more orangey 3-pack version of Clayface, the single-carded Mega-Fig version of Bane, and the new 2-pack version of Killer Croc, whose review I am working on. For a relative scale comparison, here's Harvey with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Are there villains that McFarlane still needs to give us comic book versions of? Yes. Are there villains McFarlane's done but I'd like to see him take another swing at? Absolutely. And that's to say nothing about the villains who haven't been made at all. But by and large, McFarlane Toys has done a marvelous job with Batman Batman's Rogues Gallery. I do think this costume displays better with a wider variety of figures, but with no character-specific accessories for playability, I'm giving Two-Face 3 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. If you manage to find him in stores, he's $28, which is already way too much given how little you're getting, but after weeks of checking every Walmart, Target, GameStop, and Books A Million in a 40-minute radius, I gave up. I went to eBay and shipping included, ponied up $60. That was the best price I could find. Is this figure worth it? Not in a million years, but I'm glad that the search is over and that I'm done wasting time and money trying to find him. This has been one of the most needlessly frustrating experiences I've had collecting DC Multiverse, and that's saying something, especially given just how frustratingly barren this box is. That said, I do have one suggestion for how McFarlane Toys can make it right. Release this figure one more time, but the white and red version. Use the same tooling, but this time do it as a DC Multiverse for the standard DC Multiverse price. Include all the necessary hands, and make sure they're compatible with this guy. Heck, since it's red, maybe even make it a Target exclusive. If McFarlane made one of those, it might just be my actual display figure. As much as I like the white and black, the white and red makes me think of an angel and a devil, which to me makes a lot of sense, especially when you remember that Harvey Dent is a lawyer. To the best of my research, he never wore this suit in the comics, and it was just a promotional image, but really, when has that stopped them? That said, I'm sure a lot of people would be happy if they'd make an Arkham version, or their own version of Capullo. As is though, and based on the lack of accessories, and especially the availability, for price I'm giving the Platinum Edition Two-Face 0 points, averaging out to a still okay total of 3.2 out of 5. For more videos, including my Year 1 giveaway, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.